Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome to Eye on Egypt with me, Maqbool Javed. As of 3 p.m. this afternoon, a state of emergency has been declared across Egypt. The announcement comes amid security crackdowns on pro-Morsi protesters, with a death toll estimated between hundreds and thousands of deaths. At Nahda Square, smoke could be seen rising above the protest camp after security forces moved in to disperse protesters. State TV later reported that security forces had cleared that camp. With the Brotherhood calling on supporters to take to the streets, the violence risks further destabilizing the most populous Arab nation and endangering hopes for democracy. Here is Nathaniel Amos Samson with more.
Flying to freedom after 17 months of incarceration. Hosni Mubarak's incarceration came to an end yesterday as he was airlifted from Tora Prison to Maadi military hospital. With his release, albeit under house arrest, Egypt's revolution takes another uncertain turn. After exhausting every judicial procedure, the law courts deem that Mubarak should be placed under house arrest until retrial is held on August 25th. Mubarak's defence lawyer, Farid Al-Deeb, offered little information on Mubarak's plans beyond his release.
Yes, to release him, but we are waiting some procedures. Thank you.
Mubarak was sentenced to life in jail last year over the deaths of 800 people in the 2011 protests. But following a successful appeal, a retrial began in May. Despite these legal wranglings, public opinion in Cairo seems to have moved on. Many appear to be indifferent to Mubarak's fate.
I think releasing Mubarak at this time will cause some internal problems between opponents and supporters of this move. But our country's best interest should be above all interests. We have one corrupt president and one menacing one. Both should be on trial.
However, many will see this as a political act, showing the old regime reasserting itself. It is reported that under the previous Morsi government, a fact-finding committee was created to investigate the violence since the start of the revolution. Leaked details suggested it implicates Mubarak and his top aides, including former Interior Minister Habib el-Adlai, who is on trial alongside Mubarak. Many doubt that it will be released because it implicates numerous military officials in the violence. Tora Prison now houses many former members of Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood government, and while Mubarak had full legal counsel, former President Morsi, who is being held by the army at an undisclosed location, has not been given any counsel, only being charged after being detained. Mubarak's release from prison comes 2 days after Egyptian state television announced that they had captured the Muslim Brotherhood's spiritual leader, Mohammed Bahadi. He is currently being held at an undisclosed location. The release of Hosni Mubarak calls into question the strategy and optimism of the 2011 uprisings. But whether Mubarak becomes an influential figure once more in the interim government is yet to be seen. Nathaniel Amos Samson, Islam Channel.
Welcome back to the studio with me, and I am joined to discuss the current situation in Egypt and potential developments by Fatima Saeed and Muhammad Mahmoud from the Muslim Association of Britain, as well as Dr. Daoud Abdullah from the Middle East Monitor, who's the director on Skype. So this is a horrific situation, as we can see from what is going on. Both of you are Egyptian. Fatima, do you have family? Do you have news?
Yes, I'd just like to say, firstly, I'm coming here speaking first and foremost as a human being. What we're seeing in Egypt now is one of the worst state-led massacres in the history of the country. We're talking about innocent men, women and children being slaughtered in cold blood. The military has shown its true face, it's rearing its ugly head, it's shown its true actions by murdering these innocent protesters simply for demanding democracy and freedom. This is all they came out to demand. And we're seeing now what we're seeing all over Egypt, and I'm upset that media outlets are describing these as clashes. These are not clashes. This is one side using unjustified and unnecessary force against the other. It can't be described as anything less than crimes against humanity. And these deaths, all the blood, every single drop of blood shed, we hold General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi responsible for that, and we also hold anyone who supports him, anyone who gives their tacit approval to his actions, including the leaders of Western governments.
Okay. Dr. Daud Abdullah, what news are you getting as to the numbers of casualties and the situation on the ground?
Well, it varies. I mean, it's starting from a minimum of 300 up to 500. No one really knows conclusively. We're speaking of Cairo only, and of course, throughout all the provinces, there have been many deaths, Alexandria, and so on. So it's still too early to make a clear estimate of how many have been killed.
Would you have a rough idea? I mean, the media reporting hundreds to thousands. Do we have any handle?
No, I wouldn't put a guess on it. I would say, simply say between 300 and 500, and that's a conservative estimate. We will see, because take for example in Adawiya Square today, what happened? They moved in, destroyed the field hospital, took away all the medicine, so people were left dying without any medical attention and care. So obviously the number will rise from what we heard early on today.
And Mohammed, have you heard from family there, from contacts in Egypt?
I mean, my father called his cousin to check up on him. He's participating in the Rabaa protests.
So they're actually in Rabaa?
I don't know who of them is in Rabaa right now. But other than that, not much of my family has participated in the sit-ins. But we're more concerned about the general public and the Egyptian people in general, as a whole.
And the reports of live ammunition being used, do you hear that from people that you've spoken to?
Yes, and I'd just like to expand on what Dr. Abdullah was saying, that I've been in contact actually with family and friends on the ground from the beginning of the massacre. So I was up all night trying to establish contact with them. And I've been in contact with people from the field hospital, and the last figure they gave me before they were attacked by military and police forces was over 600 killed and thousands injured. So that's the latest figures that I have. I also have pictures, they've sent me pictures of snipers attacking them, shooting at them with live bullets. Yes. This is what we're seeing in Egypt today, a full-scale massacre, and one which the world cannot sit back and watch, innocent men, women and children being slaughtered. And I'm speaking on behalf of British Egyptians for Democracy, and I'm proud to call myself a British Egyptian. But you cannot come and have the British government, for example, the Foreign Secretary William Hague coming out and saying, calling for calmer restraint. This is not a walk in the park. This is, we're talking about innocent men, women, children being slaughtered. So the rhetoric has to be stepped up. We have to recognise that this is a coup. You have to recognise it for what it is, and it's a bloody textbook military coup.
Oh, you will have heard that a Sky journalist and another journalist, a Sky journalist, was killed, and one of his reports talked about AK-47 and M16 rifles being used. So there seems to be corroboration from individuals who are independent from those who were protesting that live ammunition was actually used, and as we saw and we hear, unfortunately led to the deaths of many people, including the press who were there to report on what was going on.
They're actually specifically targeting journalists, and I'm sorry I'd let you, Mohammed, but I was actually watching a live feed and I could see cameramen being shot. If the military has nothing to hide, if they really are attacking terrorists as they claim, then why don't they let these people report? Why has a Reuters reporter had his camera smashed, has his photos deleted? Why was he arrested? Why has an Al Jazeera correspondent been arrested simply for covering the protests? Why have cameramen and journalists been killed? This is absolutely a full-scale massacre, and they don't want the world to see their crimes.
Well, Dr. Abdullah, the question is, Fatima says that they don't want to see the world to see their crimes, but it has been beamed around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, Dr. Dawud Abdullah, sorry.
It has been recorded, documented, and seen in real time. On our website, you would see a young man being shot live, by a sniper. So everything is documented, and there is absolutely no excuse, therefore, for not for the absence of prosecution. Those who ordered, those who executed, those who participated in this should bear responsibility, criminal responsibility, before an international court of law, because the evidence is quite compelling. It's all there. But as a rejoinder to addition to what Fatima was saying, the pattern was there from the very beginning. The closure of radio stations, TV stations, newspapers. Next day after the coup, in fact, on the day the coup was staged on the 3rd of July, TV stations were commanded, people were arrested, journalists were arrested from day one, from the very first day. This was the pattern, to silence opposition, to weed out journalists who were going to broadcast and to share with the world what was happening in Egypt.
Yeah, Dr. Abdullah, the point is that the world has seen. Why do the Egyptian military think that they can blatantly behave in this way and, as we hear reports, kill, you say, 300 to 500 protesters? Why do they think that they can get away with it?
It's a very good question, and the simple reason is this is a regime that is sponsored to the tune of $1.5 billion a year by the American administration. After Israel, this is the country that receives the most American aid in the world. They are a strategic ally to the Americans. They knew before the coup was staged. And these Egyptians, none of these officers in the military council, the ruling council, none of them participated in the war of 1973, the last war Egypt fought against Israel. All of them are American educated, American brainwashed, and they are the servants of the Zionists and the Americans. So they feel confident enough that they will get away with murder.
Would you therefore speculate, and we can only speculate, that the Americans and other powers were notified beforehand, before this sort of massacre took place? I mean, this clearing up operation, do you think they would have been notified?
Certainly. They work hand in glove. I mean, Mike Dempsey was in touch with the Egyptians long before the coup was staged on the 3rd of July. They are in contact every day. And the overthrow of President Morsi, the American ambassador in Cairo, was in his office hours before it was staged. So it is not beyond the capacity to know what was happening before this massacre was staged today.
Mohammed, what's the Muslim Association of Britain hearing from the ground?
Well, we receive the same news that everybody's receiving through media outlets, through the television, through the internet. The death toll, like Dr. Dawood said, way above 500. That's a conservative estimate. We just want to point out to the West and to the British public that what's happening in Egypt right now is not the Muslim Brotherhood versus the government. It's not black and white. You have channels over here, without mentioning their names, simplifying matters, as Fatma said, describing what's happening as clashes, supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. The people who have taken to the streets are not supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood only. They're the Egyptian public.
Okay.
These are normal people who have taken to the streets.
Let me put this to you then. What were the military to do if Cairo streets and other cities are blocked with protesters and they want to clear them? How are they meant to deal with that?
The protests are all peaceful protests. They're practicing and exercising their democratic right, or their constitutional right, to demonstrate peacefully. There have been no institutes, no government institutes, private institutes that have been attacked, or there's been no intimidation. We hear daily from Sisi and his cronies that there's been intimidation and provocative language used and incitement of violence. Where's
Do you
the
say
evidence?
there's nothing to
No,
that?
no evidence. All of the protests so far, and they have been so blatant in expressing their peacefulness, how peaceful the protests are. They've even, a couple of days ago, they hung up a banner in Rab'a al-Adawiyya Square saying peaceful. You know, it's a peaceful protest. So none of the protests have been violent.
Do you know that the military have said that they were fired upon by protesters, allegedly? I mean, have you heard that?
I mean, it's so easy to make up such an allegation and to stage a photo shoot where they enter the tents and there's some scattered pieces of weaponry, some firearms and some machetes on the floor. That's not difficult to do. Egypt, there's loads of domestically made single shotguns that are made in any workshop. Knives are everywhere. That's not difficult. The EU delegates and British MPs who went to Rab'a al-Adawiyya, they went and they checked out the square and they knew that it was a peaceful protest and they knew that there were no weapons that were used. And even if there are some weapons, let's just say, you know, like hypothetically, how does that compare to the military might of the Egyptian army? It's nothing next to it, or even the security services, the police. But I return to my point that the people who are participating are the Egyptian public. These are the Egyptian people. Every member of the Muslim Brotherhood, with their wives and their children and their siblings and their fathers and their mothers, they couldn't fill Tahrir Square. They wouldn't be able to fill Tahrir Square. And this is an admission by the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not something to be ashamed of. What's happening now is the people have taken to the streets to take their country back from the military, who have ruled the country for 60 years with an iron fist. And as Dr. Dawood said, none of them witnessed any battles. None of them have witnessed any warfare. No Egyptian soldiers have killed enemy troops of an invading country or anything like that. For how many years? Yeah, they've killed hundreds of their own kin in one day. And a funny statistic to mention is there haven't been that many Egyptians killed on a day since the French invasion of, I think it was 1798. And even then, there wasn't that many Muslim Egyptians who were killed. And they used cannons and fired upon Al-Azhar and the scholars and the clerics of Egypt and the general population of the time. At the time, yeah.
Well, Dr. Abdullah, women and children in the square, no violence used by protesters. Does this accord with the information that you are getting?
Yes, we have people on the ground who have been filing through reports throughout the day, and of course from other sources that we have gained access to. We've known, members of the family of Dr. Beltaji's daughter was killed, and other members of the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood, as well as hundreds who were murdered. Children, there is one specific report of children being burnt alive in a tent, while they were sleeping. That report is now being distributed by the Middle East Monitor. So the crimes are gruesome in scale and in terms of its character. The nature of the crimes, not just in the magnitude, but in the very nature, to kill children while they're sleeping. But then again, those who murdered worshippers during the month of Ramadan as they prostrated, it's quite understandable that they would return again to commit similar crimes, such as to murder babies.
Okay, I mean, I go back to one of the other points that's been raised, which is even if a green light had been given by outside powers, how is it that the Egyptian military, which sees itself as representing the Egyptian people, how is it that they feel that they could engage in this operation, leading to the numbers of deaths that we've heard about? How did they think that was going to allow people to still support them?
they try to orchestrate it by entering into this alliance, this unholy alliance with the so-called liberals, with the section of the Coptic Church and so-called secularists. They entered into this alliance to give them cover. Their intent from day one was to restore the old regime, to preserve their interests, you see. And now those so-called liberals are realizing Al-Baradei, he has resigned. They all realize, and before it's too late, before they are brought before an international court for these crimes. But nevertheless, they were part of it. They staged the coup, they dismantled the elected democratically government of the Egyptian people, and they bear responsibility for all the crimes committed since the 3rd of July.
What do you say about the people who are supporting the actions of the military?
These are the supporters of the old regime, the vested interests, those who have been paid off, those who have been bought by money from the Gulf, bought by the alliance, the relationship with the Israelis and the Americans. They put their mouths where the soup is coming from. That's why they support the military. But they know in their hearts that this has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with freedom. It has nothing to do with the rule of law, with transparency, with accountability. It's not in the interest of Egypt. The Egyptian economy is in free fall at the moment. The banks are closed today. The country is in a state of permanent decline at the moment, and it can only be restored. It can be through the restoration of the legitimate government of the people.
Yes. Well, Fatima, surely not every protester in Tahrir Square was an Israeli stooge or paid by the Americans. There must be some people there who were against the Morsi government.
Definitely, there were some people who came down on 30th of June with legitimate grievances, and I think that should be respected. But also to try and put this idea forward about this is not a coup, it's a revolution. I'm sorry, this is a coup by every single definition of the word. And support for the coup does not legitimize the coup, it delegitimizes those who support it. So those who are seeing their brothers and sisters, let's even forget. This is beyond politics now. We're talking about innocent human beings being slaughtered. Forget politics. If you see your brother and sister being killed and you're cheering that on, then that's absolutely horrific. And, it's sad that people are putting their personal agendas and their political agendas ahead of their humanity. I repeat this again, I speak first and foremost as a human being. I saw from the live feed that I was given by family and friends, I saw with my own eyes women and children being burnt alive in their tents. I saw people being shot by live bullets. It's absolutely indiscriminate, absolutely horrific acts and crimes against humanity. And those responsible must be brought to justice.
Yes, they must be brought to justice, those who have committed acts. Mohammed, any comments on that? Very quickly, we have to go for a break.
Yeah, we just call on everyone to recognize what happened on 3rd of July as a military coup, and that what's taking place right now is proof of that. That the military do not know do not know diplomacy. They don't know how to deal with things peacefully. They only know the hammer and to hammer those in front of them, and that's what they've done. They've taken out hundreds of innocent civilians.
Well, we've had an assessment of what is happening on the ground and from our contributors in the studio. We will look at the implications of what this actually means for the most populous country in the Arab region. We'll take a short break and come back after that. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for your contribution. It's not being recorded now, is it?